Welcome, fellow bookworms, to Tibra's Den. My name is Whitney, and we are reading The Ring by Danielle Steel. I have to say that this isn't a book I would ever probably gravitate to on my own, and I'm so thankful I picked it up. We're only through the first set of chapters 1 through 13, and I'm already hooked. I've already cried. I'm already very emotionally invested in these characters. And so, that's one of the main purposes of this channel is to kind of try books and genres and authors that we wouldn't necessarily try. And so I really hope you are participating with me as we read The Ring, even if you're not thinking you're a big fan of Danielle Still, especially if you've never read her. Like, I definitely loving this book, and I'm so thankful I decided to take a chance on one of my grandma's favorite authors. As I mentioned, she gifted me her whole collection, and I'm kind of doing books in my own collection, choosing the book of the month based on books that have a connection to family and friends. So really glad I decided to read this one, and like I said, I hope you are joining me. Before we get into the discussion questions for this, just want to remind everybody that we finished up Full Moon this past Saturday, and we are jumping straight into Grave Peril. And so we started this, we're reading it this week, and we're just reading the first set of chapters, which is chapters 1 through 21. We're just splitting this book into two and versus doing like full chapter sets. So really excited to jump into this, and I've heard that once you hit the third book, it really gets good. So really excited for that. As always, I like to introduce our weekly reads. We do those every Wednesday. This week we are finishing up Carla Negger's Secrets of the Lost Summer. I've actually just finished this, and so enjoyable. I Another book I was kind of expecting, oh, it's just like a little romancy, like easy read. And it is, but so much more to this. And I mean, this is a book I'm going to be rereading for sure. So hopefully you participated in that. If not, you can find my thoughts up in Wednesday's video, and hopefully you'll get a copy. But on Wednesday, we're going to jump into spooky season, and we're going to start reading with the Four Summoners' Tales, which have four different stories from Kelly Armstrong, Christopher um, Golden, David Liss, and Jonathan Mawberry. So really excited to get into some spooky books for sure. So hopefully you'll join me for that. And then next Wednesday, I always like to introduce, the next weekly read, and that way if you need a physical copy and you want to participate, you have a little bit of time to get that together. And so we are going to be reading Gail Wilson, Boogeyman. And I'm going to go ahead and read the synopsis for you guys so that way you have an idea of what it's about, and hopefully you'll join me as we read this. As always, with our weekly reads or any of our other reads, check your local library, check to see if there's a Kindle or audio version if you don't mind not having a physical copy. Those are great ways to participate without, adding new books to your shelf before you know whether or not you like it. So, anyway, on to the synopsis. It says, Boogeyman, a child's worst nightmare, a mother's worst fear. A year after the death of her husband, Blythe Windham moves with her 4-year-old daughter, Maddie, back to the small town where she grew up. But soon after they move in to their new home, strange things begin to happen. Maddie has disturbingly intense nightmares, so intense that Blythe fears one night she might not be able to awaken her daughter. A psychologist explains that Maddie's dreams are simply the result of her father's death, but Blythe knows something else is wrong, because she also heard the ghostly tapping at her daughter's window. Convinced the house is haunted, Blythe researches the town's history and discovers that a little girl had been brutally murdered in the area 25 years ago. Could there be some connection between this dead child and Maddie? With the help of Sheriff Cade Jackson, Blythe tries to separate past horrors from present dangers and struggles to distinguish the real from the imagined. But someone is clearly determined to keep a secret and will kill again to do so. So yeah, really excited for this. Goes perfectly with spooky season. Like I said, I hope you will join me for all these reads. And then also, as a reminder, I started doing Throwback Thursdays. So every Thursday, I revisit some of my childhood favorites. So again, if you're not subscribed, please do so. Hit the bell notification and give this video a like. So let's go ahead and jump into the discussion questions about The Ring. There are going to be, as always, certain levels of spoilers. We are talking about these chapters and these characters. I do try to keep it somewhat vague. Um, so, if you haven't read it and you're not sure if you're going to, I hope you will watch this video. It might kind of entice you to go ahead and pick it up. I do want to give a big trigger warning for this one, though. It does deal with like prejudice. It's set in Nazi Germany as Hitler's like rising to power and then during the war. And then it also deals with suicide. So uh like I said, it made me cry right off the bat, and so that's something, to be aware of going in. But again, one of my favorite things about these fiction reads is taking points of it that relate to real situations in real life and discussing them with, other people who have read the book. So, um, it is a kind of a rough read, but it is really enjoyable, and the characters are really well developed and everything. So hopefully, like I said, you'll join me. But let's go ahead and jump into this discussion questions. I rambled on enough. And also, you may notice I'm kind of all stuffed up. My allergies are really bad, which I noticed watching some other booktubers that their allergies are struggling as well. So I think we're all just kind of in the same boat right now. But yeah, it is what it is. I did start a new medication. Hopefully, it will start helping soon. But anyway, we're gonna start with chapter one. Since this is a larger book, there's just gonna be one question for each chapter. So this is, you can tell what chapter we're kind of basing the question on based by the number. So we're on to number one, which says, "Why Kassandra is well off. She is trapped by her situation. Have you ever felt trapped by the circumstances you were in?" And I actually have. When I really suffered from burnout. So, I didn't realize it at the time. I thought it was just burnout from the job, but I realize now there's also autistic burnout. And in case you haven't seen any of my previous videos, I am autistic. And so I was kind of like a double whammy. And my whole life has been revolved around animals, working with animals. Like from a teen on, I've worked with animals. And so I really didn't know anything else. Like my whole life, even before that, revolved about animals, learning about animals, specifically dogs and horses. For a while, I was really into horses, which isn't that uncommon. But then I really gravitated toward dogs, somewhat cats, but that's all I knew. So when I got really burnt out and I got married and I was really struggling, I didn't know what to do, and I did feel trapped because my whole life had revolved around animals. And I know it's not quite the same thing, but that's the best way I can relate, because I did feel trapped. It's like I'm trapped because this is all I know. Um and so I'm very, very fortunate that my husband's income can support us enough to pay the bills. We don't have a lot of extra, but we have enough to make sure the bills are paid, and we're not really struggling. There's food in the fridge and everything like that. I'm really fortunate in that, and that allowed me, to free myself from the circumstances I was in, because otherwise I would still be working probably at a vet clinic, and I would still be really struggling with my mental health right now. And I probably wouldn't have even ever gotten an autism diagnosis, because I would have thought it was just because of the work, which it kind of goes along with that. So I did feel trapped by that. And especially before I met my husband, I didn't have the financial freedom to try to explore any other avenues. And so that's what I relate to, like feeling trapped by kind of your circumstances, just kind of where your path led you. When she was born into her circumstance, but it's the same thing. She didn't. That's where it led her. Like she never really felt like she had a choice to do anything different than what she was doing, and so that's, like I said, that's the biggest way I can relate to it for sure. So, and that's kind of what led me to this channel. Once I was able to get out of that situation, and trying to discover what else I had a passion for, to do something with, and books were it. So, anyway, on to chapter 2, question 2. Cassandra's husband is portrayed as kind and understanding, and the kids are definitely important to her. So why is she dissatisfied with her life? And I really think it's just the lack, excuse the puppies hitting the table. So that's why you see the camera shaking. Um, but I think it was just really a lack of connection. Like, yes, her husband was kind and she did love him. Like, she loved him in her own way, but he was significantly older than her. Um, it was more a merger that made sense than based on any romantic interest for either party. And so that she's trapped by that, and there's no, as much as she loves him, there's no like romantic connection there. So I can see why she's dissatisfied there. And then her kids, she's not allowed to take care of them. Like, that's unheard of in her social class. The moms don't take care of the kids, they hire a governess. And so she's not even able to take care of her own kids, and they don't have that connection to her. So as much as she loves them, there's just that lack of connection. And so her life is just kind of revolved around, being pretty and hosting parties and things like that. So I can see why she's definitely dissatisfied with her life. And number 3, Hitler is rising to power, and Cassandra doesn't fully believe Dolph or Walmar about the severity of the situation. Do you think disbelief played a part in the real Hitler's rise to power? And I really think it did. I can see, even more recently, with some events more recently, I can see how you either have the people that fully supported him and believed, his mission, and so they were fully supportive, or you had the people that just, well, that's never gonna happen. Like, that's just so outrageous. That's never gonna happen. And then you have the people that were actually living it and being affected. And so I think, a large chunk of the people fell in that middle range. Like, they weren't Jewish, like in this case, they're kind of well off and have a role to play. And so, well, that's never going to touch us. And because it's never going to touch us, like, surely they wouldn't do that to other people. Like, there's just no way they would actually do that. Or maybe if they even believed part of it, maybe they felt like, well, you know, maybe they deserve it a little bit, or it doesn't matter because it won't touch us, not realizing that everybody's a part of the whole, and so it does touch them and it does affect them for sure. And for even being justified in his reason for staying, where's Dolph's sense of preservation? And I don't think it was really a matter of preservation for him, of self preservation for him. I think really for him, he would rather die than be forced from his country. Like, he had every right to be there. It was his country too, and so he would really. Could you? Sorry, they want to lay under the table, so they keep hitting the camera. Um, but yeah, I think um, I'm all bamboozled now thanks to certain critters. But I'm not redoing this video because I've already struggled. So, but anyway, back to my train of thought. I think for him, like I said, he would rather die than flee his country. So it really wasn't about preserving his life. It was, he had a lot of pride in being German, and he wouldn't have been happy if he had fled the country. He would never have been able to find happiness or anything else. So he might as well have been dead, and I think that's why he stayed. 5, was it worse for Cassandra being present while they took Dolph, or would it have been worse if she didn't know what happened to him? And I think in this instance, it was definitely worse for her being present. Not only did she see the brutality, which was a big wake up call for her, but she also, then had to compromise herself, and reveal who she was and everything like that. So I think for her not knowing what happened or knowing what happened, but not being where she had seen it happen, where she could just not really know the brutality of it. Like, no, yes, they took him, and yes, maybe he's dead, but she wouldn't have seen the brutality of it. So I think it was definitely worse for her being there and being able to see, where some people it would have been the opposite. It would have been worse not knowing. But in her situation, I think it was a lot worse for her being there and seeing it for sure. And six, Walmart is amazingly kind and understanding. Does Cassandra deserve him? And honestly, I mean, I really feel for Cassandra. Like I said, the author really developed these characters, right away, and you certainly feel a connection. And so I do feel for Cassandra, and I understand why she was doing what she was doing. But at the end of the day, her husband loved her, and he was willing to overlook everything. And the one moment he asks her, not to do something and has a valid reason for it too, um, she kind of just thinks of herself, and doesn't listen at all. And so I don't think she really deserved to have a man like Wilmer or Walmer. Um, I think, like I said, he was so understanding and always took her feelings into consideration, because he realized, she married an old man, and he realized, she was young and was kind of trapped in the situation. But the moment he brought up any concerns at all, she just kind of brushed him aside and refused to listen or even try to come up with a solution at all. So I don't think she deserved him. And number seven, Walmart blames himself. One reason being him keeping Cassandra from the kids. If she had been able to be more hands on, would it have given her something to live for? And honestly, I don't think it would have. It might have given her a little bit more pause, but I think at the end of the day, one of the reasons that she decided to take her life was the shame she felt that she had brought, you know, this horrific situation to their doorstep, essentially. She put her husband and her kids at risk. So I think that guilt and that shame, and then just the trauma from seeing Dolph taken and then being assaulted, I think that I don't think it would have been enough for her to grasp onto. I think it would have helped for certainly, for sure. And I think there was maybe a chance she might have held on to that. But in the end, I think it would have, the same result would have happened whether she had been able to be more hands on with the kids or not. So, and let's see here. How hard would it be to navigate the social structure during the Hitler regime while growing up? And that's question number 8. And I think it would be extremely difficult, especially in Ariana's and her brother's case. I think, they're not Jewish, so they don't have, the prejudice against them, but at the same time, they're not fully supportive of Hitler. So they're trying to navigate, not only learning the social rules in general, but also having to learn to navigate, these two worlds. Like, they have to put on a front that they are very supportive of Hitler and what he's doing, while at the same time not being. But for their own safety, they have to be very, very careful. And so I think it would be extremely difficult to try to navigate that and learn about that for sure. So, and let's see here. Number 9, Walmart goes above and beyond to help Max. Why does he not only risk so much but also include Ariana? And I think he was getting to the point where he was recognizing how dire the situation was getting. And I think he was getting tired of not being able to do anything in the least against Hitler. So I think he was just ready to help, in his own way, to do something against Hitler. And Max was a friend, and so that was a way for him to do it. And I think, including Ariana, he was realizing that she was growing up and she needed to realize just how bad the situation. I think he saw, Ariana didn't have a concept of how bad the situation was and was kind of in a little bit of disbelief, like her mom was. And so I think, he recognized that and knew like she needs, like, just telling her wouldn't have been enough. And so he knew he needed to involve her so she can just see herself how dire the situation is. Number 10, why did Walmart decide to tell Ariana about how her mother died? And again, I think it was just to further drive home how bad the situation was, and how it's not enough to watch what you're doing, but you also have to be careful of who you interact with as well, to really drive that home, because I think, Max was married to a Jewish woman, and so, she saw why that would affect him, but not necessarily how that would affect their lives. And so telling her about her mother, I think, like I said, would just really drive that home for sure for her, especially as she's coming of age and going to be interacting with men and things like that. So, number 11, Walmart has used his position to keep his kids relatively unaffected by the war, which is becoming impossible as they get older. Is he making the right choice by fleeing? And I really don't think there's a right choice in this situation. Either way, the kids are going to be affected. I think for what he was trying to accomplish, like, he did not want his kids being drawn into, being Nazi supporters, um, or being part of the war or anything like that. And so I think he did make the right choice for what he was trying to achieve. But again, there's really no right choice. And I think for I don't know how to pronounce his name, Gerhard. Um, I think it was the right choice because he was so innocent, and I know a lot of the young boys and such were. It kind of reminds me of that movie Swing Kids, and such a heartbreaking movie. But they were so young and innocent, and then they just get drug into all this, and so it's gonna affect him either way. But I think it would have definitely broke him if he had to become part of Hitler's army for sure. And number 12, Walmart has to go between his two children. If something happens, are either Ariana or Gerhard prepared enough? And I think, based on how he included Ariana, I think she is a little bit more prepared than Gerhard. I think Gerhard, he, like I said, he still has that innocence, but he's very intelligent. And as they're, dealing with this situation, he is picking up on what he needs to do. And then I also think that kind of innocence works in his favor as well. But I don't think he is fully prepared, for what happens next. I think Ariana is a little bit, but even her, like, it's going to be hard for her to navigate. There's no way to be fully prepared, I don't think. So, and number 13, which is the last question, was there anything else Ariana could have done to ease suspicion? And I don't think so on her own. I think, trying to keep her story to match what her father had told her was the right thing to do. But at the same time, I think that story was a little weak, especially knowing, their governess knows them very well. She's going to know something's up because they're acting funny. Um, and so I don't think there was much more she could have done. I think, she did very well with what she had to work with. But I don't think there was much more she could have done. But that's the last question. I'm gonna go ahead and leave you guys here. This week we are reading chapters 14 through 26. Definitely check back next Monday for the next set of discussion questions. I have no doubt it's just gonna get better and better from here. I'm gonna go ahead and leave you guys here. Happy reading, everyone. Bye.